When the kitchen door slammed shut with a crash so loud it sounded like a storm had burst into the house, Evelyn knew it would all end today. Not end in the sense of divorce or death, no, that would have been easier. This was about the collapse of something she'd spent her whole life building: family. 37 years of marriage, 2 children, 5 grandchildren, and now it all teetered on the edge of turning to ash, all because of one dinner. She stood at the stove, gripping a wooden spoon so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her daughter Linda's voice still rang in her ears. "You never listen. You just talk, and we're supposed to stay quiet and thank you for your wisdom." It had been hissed through clenched teeth, but with such fury it was clear Linda had been hoarding that resentment for years and had finally poured it all over the holiday table. Evelyn slowly lowered the spoon back into the pot of thick tomato soup. The comforting aroma of garlic and basil now made her stomach churn. She glanced out the window. Beyond the glass, the sunset over the Denver suburbs glowed faintly. The house she and Robert had bought in 1989 still looked solid: brick walls, a tidy lawn, swings in the backyard for the grandchildren. But inside, everything was cracking at the seams. She hadn't wanted this dinner. Not today. Not after Linda had said on the phone a week earlier, "Mom, Mark and I decided to sell your old piano." "Sell it?" Evelyn had asked, as if she hadn't heard right. "Yeah. It's just taking up space in the living room. No one plays it." "You played it, Linda. You took lessons from the time you were 5. That was 30 years ago, Mom. We want to put a sofa there. It'll be more open." Evelyn had stayed silent then. But something inside her had broken, not the piano, no. It was the thread that tied them together. The thing that made her a mother, not just a mom from the past. And yet, she'd invited them all to dinner anyway. Linda and Mark, her son Ben and his wife Kate, even the grandchildren, though she knew it would be awkward. She'd hoped that if she gathered everyone around one table, like in the old days, things might heal. That the old spark would return, the one that warmed them when Robert told funny stories and the kids laughed until they cried. But Robert was gone. He'd passed 2 years ago, quietly, in his sleep, as if he'd simply decided to rest. And ever since, the house had felt different. Colder. Emptier. And now, even his memory didn't seem strong enough to hold the family together. Linda was the first to storm out of the kitchen. She grabbed her coat from the hall rack and spun toward her husband. "I'm leaving." "Wait, Lynn." Mark stood but didn't move. He knew, when Linda spoke like that, arguing was useless. "No. I'm tired of being the good daughter. Tired of apologizing for living my own life." "No one asked you to apologize." Ben's voice came from the living room. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "But you could have at least not insulted Mom for trying to hold on to something from Dad. And you." Linda whirled on him. "You've been silent this whole time. Sitting there like furniture. Have you ever once defended me when she called me too career-driven or not motherly enough?" Ben shrugged. "I just don't see the point in these fights. Mom's trying. She's alone." "She's not alone. She has us. But she wants us to live by her rules, as if it's still 1975. No Wi-Fi, no careers for women, no room to make mistakes." Evelyn heard every word from the kitchen. Each one pierced her heart like a needle. She hadn't wanted to be a tyrant. She was just afraid. Afraid they'd forget her. Afraid her love would become useless to them. She stepped into the hallway. Everyone fell silent. Even little Jake, Linda's 5-year-old, stopped playing with his toy car and stared at her with wide eyes. "I never asked you to live by my rules," Evelyn said softly. "I only asked one thing: remember. Remember who you are. Where you came from. Who raised you." "We remember, Mom," Ben said gently. "But the world has changed. We've changed too. And I haven't?" Her voice trembled with pain. "I'm learning too. Every day. I downloaded Zoom so I could see the grandkids when they're far away. I made an Instagram account to watch you accept your award at work. I'm trying." Linda was silent. Her lips quivered. She looked at her mother, not as an enemy, but as someone she might have stopped understanding long ago. "You shouldn't have sold the piano without asking," Evelyn said. "It was Robert's gift. Our 10th anniversary. He saved for 6 months to buy it. And you didn't even ask." I thought you wouldn't notice. It was just sitting there. To you, it was just sitting. To me, it was memory. But I didn't know. Linda's voice cracked with tears. You never told me. And you never asked. Silence settled over the house like fog. Even the wall clock seemed to slow its ticking. Half an hour later, they were all seated at the table. The soup had gone cold, but no one complained. Evelyn brought out bread and sliced it thin, crusty slices, just as she always had. Linda helped set the plates. Then opened a bottle of wine, the one Robert had saved for a special occasion. Dad said he'd open it when Jake started school, Ben said, pouring the glasses. Then today is special, Evelyn replied softly. They ate in silence. But it wasn't the silence of hostility, it was the quiet in which something new was being born. Cautious. Fragile. Like the first green shoot after a wildfire. I'm sorry, Mom, Linda said suddenly. I didn't mean. I just felt like you didn't approve of my life. I do approve of you. Evelyn placed her hand over hers. I'm just sometimes afraid I'm losing you. You'll never lose me. Even if I sell old furniture. Evelyn smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in a long while. All right. But next time ask. I promise. Later, after the kids had tucked the grandchildren into sleeping bags in the living room, the adults sat on the porch. The night was warm, the stars bright. Somewhere in the distance, music played, neighbors having a barbecue. Remember when we first brought Linda here? Ben asked. She was 3 months old. Cried the whole drive. And then fell asleep right on the lawn, wrapped in a blanket. And Robert said, there it is, our America. Small, but ours. They laughed quietly, warmly. The next morning, Linda didn't leave. She helped her mother sort through old boxes in the garage. Among photos, school diplomas, and Robert's letters, they found an old notebook, Evelyn's recipe book. On the first page was written, for my children. So they'll remember the taste of home. You can take it, Evelyn said. I want to learn how to make your apple pie. Then we'll start today. They spent the whole day in the kitchen kneading dough, slicing apples, arguing over cinnamon. Jake ran around trying to sneak bites of raw dough. Mark read the paper in the corner, smiling. Ben came by with Kate and brought ice cream for dessert, in case the pie burns. The pie didn't burn. Family isn't a perfect dinner without arguments. It isn't a house without cracks in the walls. Family is returning to the table anyway after everything. It's saying, I'm sorry, even when you're not sure who is right. It's remembering that love isn't about being the same. It's about staying close, even when the world changes too fast. Evelyn wasn't afraid anymore. Because now she knew, her home wasn't in bricks or pianos. Her home was in her children's voices, her grandchildren's laughter, and the warm hands that reached for hers, even after the loudest fights. And that was enough.